Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. My name is Hamid. I'm the security chair for the Masjid al-Salam. Today we are having a very important portion of our security team. Should you come across any event in the case of active shooters, what should you be doing? We have today with us Sergeant Carson McMath, who has been, part of our security team for the past 8 years. It's a long time. He has been helping us and securing us and providing us the security all along during Ramadan, on every Friday or at any event. So today I am going to request Sergeant Carson McMath to come forward and tell us or train us about we come across any active shooter. So over to Sergeant McMath.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me tonight. As you said, I've been a part of your security team now for several years. I know I speak on behalf of myself and David and Kevin when I say it is our utmost honor to be able to provide that service to you guys on Friday afternoons, Ramadan, any special events you guys have on weekends, all the festivals and fairs, the art festival and things like that. So we're very happy to be here and be a part of that. And as we always say, thank you all so much for treating us so much like family and always being so welcoming. Unfortunately, that's about the high point of tonight's conversation. This is my least favorite class to teach. Sure. This is my least favorite class to teach. I've been an instructor in various capacities for over 20 years, and due to the subject matter, that's why this is my least favorite. This is a very mature, very heavy subject to talk about. Nobody really wants to talk about our own mortality and, force being used against us, but this is arguably one of the most important classes that I teach. So it's my pleasure to be here with you guys tonight and share a little bit about this with you. A little bit about myself, in case you didn't know. Most of y'all just know me as the stop sign guy down there at the three-way stop or out here in the front on Fridays. We'll let that slide transition there. I've been with the Harris County Sheriff's Office for 11 years. I am a master peace officer in the state of Texas, which basically just means I've done a lot of extra training and attended a lot of outside classes beyond what the basic required courses are for licensure in Texas. I'm currently a sergeant with the Sheriff's Office. I'm assigned to our Emergency Dispatch Center, and my current role there is to oversee all of the Sheriff's Office phone and internet-based responses. Over the last year, we've been implementing a lot of new programs to speed up our response to you all as citizens of Harris County, and what I do is oversee all of the calls that can be taken over the phone or when you self-report via the internet. I've been a law enforcement instructor for 9 years. Some of the things I teach for the Sheriff's Office and for other police agencies in the state of Texas. I'm a co-instructor for active shooter response on the law enforcement side, how our deputies, how our police officers are going to respond in these events. I've been a co-instructor on building entry and search, teaching our teams the tactics of entering a building safely, searching it, locating the attacker, locating the source of the threat, and taking care of it. And the biggest chunk of my instructor time is in crisis intervention and mental health. So my goal as a police instructor is to prevent any of this from ever happening and provide intercede and provide resources to those who are experiencing a mental health crisis so we can get them help before it ever turns into a situation like an active shooter. On the civilian side, I teach this. I teach Stop the Bleed, which is another fantastic training if you haven't done anything like that yet, where we teach you how to apply tourniquets and combat stop the bleeding type interventions so that you can hopefully save somebody's life in that very scary moment. Personally, I've been married for 11 years. I have 5 kids. I love them to death. Being a father is my greatest joy and my greatest job above all else here. And I've started my own business to be able to train you guys, train everybody else, firearms instruction, safety instruction, firearm sales, all kinds of different things. So I do a little bit of everything, jack of all trades, master of none. But the main thing I want you guys to know is education is my passion. I love sharing my knowledge with others, and I'm always in pursuit of additional knowledge myself. tonight, I do represent the sheriff's office, but above them, I represent an organization called ALERT. They are the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. They're an organization under the umbrella of Texas State University. Their mission is to provide the best research-based active shooter response training in the nation, and their vision is training and research that saves lives and protects communities. Let me go to my notes here. They've been around since 2002. They were created in response to some of the active attacker situations that have been occurring in our nation, and they wanted to figure out why this happens, where it happens, how it happens, so that we can then figure out how to prevent it or respond and save as many lives as possible when that does happen. And in 2013, ALERT was named the National Standard in Active Shooter Response Training by the FBI. So that means that the training you guys are getting tonight has been decided as the best training in the nation for civilian response to active shooter events. So what we're talking about tonight is the difference between an active attack event and an attempted mass murder, okay? They're the exact same thing. Whether you want to say one term or the other, what we're talking about is somebody who has entered a church, a school, your place of business, a daycare, a shopping mall, a grocery store, any public place with the intent to harm as many people in a short period of time as possible. What we are not talking about is hostage situations. Now, a lot of times these types of events can turn into hostage situations, but that's a totally different playbook, a totally different set of rules. We're not talking about that tonight. What I'm going to be talking about in terms of tactics and what you should be doing is when there's active attack going on. You're hearing gunfire, somebody's going around stabbing everybody, there's an active danger going on. That's what we're talking about. And the difference between those two also changes on the law enforcement side. What I need you all to understand is in an active attack situation, when we start showing up on scene, we may walk right past you, okay? It's not because we're trying to ignore you or because we didn't see you. We're walking past you because our training dictates that we move directly to the threat, eliminate the threat, and then backtrack. So if you're at a school, for example, and you're in a classroom, you're a teacher or you're a student, and you may look out that door, that classroom door window, and you may see a bunch of police officers walk right past you. All right, we will be back to help. You don't need to be, trying to come out in the hallways and stop us and grab us. We are going to take care of the threat first, because it does me no good to bring you guys out into that hallway or out into that unsecured location when there's still an active attack going on. Does that make sense? So what I want you all to understand is we may ignore you, we may walk past you. We will come back and help eventually. All right, but we've got to go take care of the threat first, and then we can rescue everybody. If it turns into a hostage situation, that may be a different story. Then you may have police officers coming to you and escorting you out of the building, because then we've got the situation controlled. We can start working on rescuing civilians, getting everybody out of the way. But if there's an active attack going on, we're going to ignore you and go straight to the problem first, and then we'll come back. So don't think that we're ignoring you. Don't think that we're leaving you behind. We just got to go take care of business, so to speak, and then we'll be back. So everybody always asks me, Sergeant McMath, what does this attacker look like? Who are the people that are perpetrating these kind of horrendous events? And I wish I had a great answer for you, but unfortunately the reality is there is no set profile. All right, the FBI, their behavioral analysis, behavioral threat unit has been studying this for years and years and years, and they still cannot come up with a common profile to say this person with XYZ categories or things going on is more likely to perpetrate one of these types of events. What we do know is many of them have an avenger mindset, so they feel they've been wronged by somebody, whether that's their boss, their corporation, their school, their principal, a friend, a family member, but it's very hard to tell who is feeling that, because that could be anybody in the world. So we can't name a particular profile, but a lot of times they feel they've been wronged, and so a lot of times they are going to be trying to carry out this attack in revenge or to avenge that perceived wrong. there may be some sort of broadcast ahead of time, and I don't mean like, getting on the internet and making a YouTube video and saying on this date and this time I'm going to do this. But what we've learned in looking at these events after the fact is there were signs, typically. We either maybe text messages were sent, notes were sent to friends, or there was some sort of communication that somebody thought, that's a little strange, but I'm just going to kind of ignore it for now. And so the caution here is, should you see that kind of stuff, should you start getting text messages from somebody that raise those alarm bells in your head going, that's not normal for this person, that doesn't sound right, don't keep that to yourself. Reach out to that person, reach out to law enforcement, reach out to your church, your principal, some sort of trusted adult, and let them know. Because if we can prevent this from happening at all, then that would be my best choice. If I never had to teach this class again because we could prevent all of these events from happening, that would be perfect. But in reality, we know that this is going to continue because not everybody is going to step up. So don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid to be the one that steps up and says, I saw something, I heard something, I read something, it didn't seem right, it concerned me a little bit. I want to let you all know so that y'all can start to look into it. And if we can start an investigation, whether it's on the police side or even just something informal within the church or our school, get counselors involved, there's a very good chance that we prevent this attack from ever happening. And that's the best choice. Some risk factors. Typically, they have a history of violent activities or an exposure to violence. Maybe they grew up in an abusive household, an abusive environment, or grew up, in situations where they were exposed to a lot of violence. Maybe that's gang violence or something like that. Many of our attackers have a substance abuse or dependence issue, so they may be dependent on alcohol or harder drugs like methamphetamine, cocaine, things like that. There is obviously a mental illness, mental health component to a lot of these situations, to where whatever has happened to wrong them or whatever, their brain says, I need to avenge this, instead of I need to reach out and get some help, and I need to get therapy and talk to a doctor and work through this in a productive way. And a lot of these attackers will have a history of suicidality, which means they may have already made outcries, they may have a history of suicide attempts, and what we know is that most attackers will end up committing suicide when confronted by law enforcement instead of getting into a gunfight with us. So what that means is a lot of these active attack situations are really just a means of suicide for that person, but they're going to take as many people with them, because if I'm suffering, other people are going to suffer as well. And I think that's very important to realize that as a motivation for a lot of these, because again, going back to, you hear people say things, you see writings, you see posts on Facebook or Instagram or social media that raise those alarm bells. A lot of times it has to do with these kind of things. And so if you can reach out to somebody else and get the ball rolling, we can a lot of times get help for these people and prevent that attack from ever happening. Some other things that are that we see but are less common: stalking, harassing, threatening behavior, negative family dynamics. They lack a support system. They lack a good, productive household where the parents are involved in their lives, care about their schooling, care about their grades, care about getting them involved in extracurricular activities. If they're from a religious family, then their parents are not getting them involved in the church, not getting them involved in those kind of productive, protective environments. Isolation and instability. A lot of these people will isolate their loners. They don't have a big friend group. They don't go out into public social situations. You're not going to see them going to parties or coming to events, community events, things like that. They're going to be by themselves. And again, others begin to be concerned about their behaviors, but they fail to step up. They fail to say something, they fail to intercede, and so ultimately, weeks, months, days, however long down the road, we end up with an active attack situation. Location of attacks. Everybody asks me, Sergeant McMath, I go to church every Sunday. I go to church every Saturday. I go to church every Wednesday. What do I need to do to protect myself at church? And that's great. I'm glad you're thinking about that. But statistically, most attacks happen at businesses. So this training is great that you're getting it here tonight through the mosque, but this training statistically is going to be more likely to apply to you in your place of business. So as we go through this presentation tonight, as you're watching it online, as you go through and rewatch it online later, be thinking about your business, your office, how it's laid out, where the doors are, where the exits are, where different offices are, where different people are, and start thinking about that in the back of your head. So as we go through this, apply what I'm talking about tonight to your business, to your churches, to the stores that you shop at, because that's where these things are going to happen. Outdoor events, I'm going to talk about a specific example here in a little bit, the Las Vegas shooting that occurred several years ago. But a lot of outdoor venues, because we know that a lot of people gather in these places, concerts, different things like that. So it's a very tempting target for somebody in this mentality that's looking to inflict a lot of harm in a short period of time. Schools, a little over 10% of the time, and other. So even religious facilities gets grouped into that other category. They're not even a full 10%. It's like 2 or 3% of the time it happens at a church. But well over 40% of the time it's occurring at our businesses. The connection. Is there a connection between the attacker and the location they choose of the attack? In 64% of cases, there's no connection. They pick a random place with a lot of people so that they can inflict a lot of harm in a very short period of time. But in 36% of cases, there is some sort of connection. Typically, they're an employee, more likely an ex-employee of the business. They've recently been terminated, recently been fired, and now they're seeking to avenge that termination at work. Or a bad relationship with a coworker, a bad relationship with a boss, but it all comes back to that work connection. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And that's kind of the overall theme of this class is I don't take any joy in having this discussion and talking about these heavy topics, but if we don't look at what's already happened and we don't learn from it, then we're going to just keep experiencing this over and over and over again. And I'm going to show some stats later in the presentation that show you just how effective this training has been since it's been implemented. And it's gone through several revisions. It's been through several different versions since it first got pushed out. What I'm teaching tonight is the most recent version, but it is not new material by any means. We keep, as we learn new things through our research, we modify this program to give you guys the most up-to-date, most recent training that's most likely to save your life. So the first shooting we're going to talk about is the UC Santa Barbara incident occurred in 2014. This is an example of pure evil at its best, if we're going to use that term. The perpetrator killed 3 people independently by stabbing them at his residence, and then he went to the campus with a gun and started shooting and driving over people in the street. So I bring this out first because you've heard me say over and over again so far, active attacker. I haven't really used the term active shooter, and there's a reason for that. Many of these attacks are, in fact, perpetrated by a gun. But as we even just recently saw in the UK a few days ago, these mass attacks do not have to involve a firearm. They can involve a knife. They can involve a vehicle. They can involve any kind of blunt instrument that this person get their hands on. When this attacker has reached that point that they've decided, I'm going to commit this atrocity, very little is going to stand in their way. And so if they can't get a gun, that's not going to stop them. They're just going to find some other method of inflicting that harm, that intended harm. So I use the term active attacker because I don't want us to think that this only applies in an active shooter situation. What I'm going to teach you all tonight applies no matter if that person's armed with a knife, a gun, a vehicle, anything. We can use these same skills. Next one, the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida in 2016. This attacker killed 49 people inside this nightclub before police were able to arrive and take care of the situation. He had a connection to this. We just saw most of our attackers do not have a connection to their place. In this case, the attacker was a frequent patron at this club, and so that's why he chose to target it. We're still not sure why, what happened that made him decide that he had a problem with this club or the people there, but he did choose to carry out his attack there, and those that survived knew the attacker because they're like, he's here all the time. He comes here all the time to be here. I mentioned the outdoor shooting, the big one, Las Vegas, Nevada in 2017. There was a concert going on outside one of the casinos, the Mandalay Bay, and the shooter was in the Mandalay Bay Hotel across the street. He was up on a very high floor, so he had a very high perch, had very good visibility of the area. And he ended up shooting, killing, I forget how many people. I think he killed 50 or 60 people, injured several hundred more. Several hundred also were injured just trying to escape the event, tripping over each other, that trample injuries, things like that. But what this did show, if there's any positive from this, is that many of the survivors that were interviewed by the FBI and police after the fact said, I remembered I had been at work or I'd been at school or I'd been somewhere where I went through this active shooter training, how to respond as a civilian, and I remembered that, and I started using some of that, and it saved their life. So this was one of the first events where we got that actual feedback from actual survivors saying this training saved my life, and it was only because I had this training that I knew what to do in that situation. One woman that they interviewed, she was credited for saving I forget how many lives, but she said, because I had gone through this training, I knew we needed to get to the exits, and before I even walked into that concert, I was looking to see where the exits were, and when the bullets started flying and we heard the gunshots, I just grabbed as many people that were around me as possible, and I shepherded them to that exit, and we all got out safely. So this training does work. We know it works because we've had feedback from people that have actually survived these events that said that training was the difference between life and death for me. Also in 2017, we had a New York City attack. This attacker rented a Home Depot rental truck and started driving down the street and running over people. He killed 8 and wounded 15 before he was stopped by law enforcement. So again, just another example of active attacker. Don't get ingrained with shooter and guns. It can be vehicles, it can be knives, it can be any method of inflicting harm on people. 2017, we had the Sutherland Springs, Texas. Here's an example of an attack that occurred at a church, one of the more rare ones because we found that most of these attacks occur at work, at our businesses. This gunman killed 26 and wounded 20 more before he was stopped by law enforcement. The shooter in this case was dishonorably discharged from the United States Air Force. So one of the things that made this a little bit more lethal than some of the other attacks is possibly his firearms and military background on that. One of the survivors was able to retrieve his own weapon and was able to take the fight back to the suspect inside the church, which forced the suspect to run away and abandon the attack. So I'm not here to push a message of self-defense, carrying a firearm for your own protection. I do that kind of training and have for many years, and if you're interested in that, I'll be happy to talk to anybody, in the coming weeks about that kind of thing. But we have seen in some of these studies over and over again that the presence of a firearm, whether it was a police officer on scene, a citizen that was there that was legally and responsibly carrying their firearm, that was able to begin to intercede with the attacker, has stopped that immediate killing and has saved lives. The number of deaths. How many people are going to die in these events? It's a product of two things: how quickly police can arrive and target availability. I want you to understand this statistic tonight: 3 minutes. 3 minutes is the national average response time for police officers to an active attack situation. From the time that the attack starts happening and somebody is able to get on their phone and call 911 and report the attack to being dispatched over the radio to available units, and those units responding 3 minutes. Now, I want you to understand, too, that that is skewed to the low end by these larger departments. You know, we live in an area where you have a lot of large police departments next to each other. You have the Houston Police Department, over 5,000 officers. You have the Harris County Sheriff's Office, over 1,800 police officers. You've got the 8 different constable precincts, well over almost 2,000 officers between the 8 different precincts. You have nearby Klein ISD Police Department, Spring Police Department, Tomball Police Department, Cy-Fair ISD Police Department. You have the Texas Department of Public Safety Highway Patrol. All of these police departments are active in this immediate area alone. So when that call comes over the radio, it doesn't get just dispatched just to the sheriff's office. That call is going to go out area-wide. So you are going to have hundreds of police officers descending upon this location in a very short period of time. However, if you travel to places, other parts of the United States, if you have family members in other parts of the United States that you go to visit, understand that they may not have that same large police presence. So if this attack happens in one of those areas, it may be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes before those police officers are able to arrive on scene. So 3 minutes is the number I want you to remember, but understand, depending on where you're at, it could be longer than that. It could be faster than that. There have been many times in my career where a hot call is dropped and I've been 20 seconds down the road and I was right there to start working it. But don't count on that. You know, we're deployed county-wide, so we may be close, we may not be. 3 minutes is what you're going to realistically have to survive and be prepared to survive for until police officers can arrive on scene. The other part is target availability. How many people are available for that attacker to inflict harm upon? All right, this is why they choose these highly populated, densely populated places. They're not going out to Old McDonald's farm on 290 to commit their attack out there because there may only be 5 or 6 people around for them to harm. They're going to come to businesses, to shopping malls, to churches, to schools, because they know that there's going to be a lot of people in a very small place relatively. They're going to be close together, and it's going to be very easy for them to harm a lot of people in a very short period of time. Because if you all know that 3 minutes is our response time, what do you think that bad guy knows? He also knows that 3 minutes is what he has or she has to inflict that harm before we show up and stop them. So they're going to be looking for opportunities to inflict as much harm in a very short period of time as possible. So on the topic of target availability, this is where target hardening comes in, you know, and that's a whole separate conversation, but the importance of locking doors, locking windows, securing exits, you know, not propping doors open. I know for any school teachers that are watching this from home or that are here with us tonight, I know that your school districts harp on you all the time. Don't prop exterior doors open. Don't use door stops and things like that. This is why. We're trying to make it as hard as possible to get inside that building so that that attack cannot occur. I'll get back on door stops here in just a little bit because they can actually be helpful to us, but not on those exterior doors. 3 minutes, I harped on that already. So this next portion of what we're going to talk about is disaster response. And what I mean by that is the science of how people behave in high-stress situations. All right? Now, there's three typical stages that a person goes through when it comes to disaster response: denial, deliberation, and then a decisive moment. All right? We're going to talk about denial first. When a situation like this begins happening, when you're sitting there at your desk doing your work, filing your reports, sending emails to your bosses, you're at school, you're studying, and all of a sudden you hear those gunshots start going off, okay? Your body is going to go into a state of stress immediately, all right? Who's heard of fight or flight response? Your body is going to decide to do one of two things. It's going to either prepare to fight whatever threat it is that it's just encountered, or it's going to prepare to run from it. In either of those situations, you're going to get in a rush of hormones and endorphins that are going to prepare your body to flee. You're going to pull blood away from the extremities. It's going to pool in your core to prepare your body to survive any kind of injuries, because your body is smart. It doesn't even think about it, but it knows we can lose a hand and we can survive. But if something happens to our heart, to our liver, our stomach, our intestines, that's a much more difficult injury to survive. So our body is an amazing, amazing, amazing creation. And without you doing anything, without you flipping a switch, without you pushing any buttons, when that stress kicks in, your body is already going to prepare itself and put itself in the best physical condition for survival. So what we have to do is prepare our brains and prepare our minds to match what our body's already doing so that we can take advantage of that. The first stage, we always joke, the first stage of anything is denial. No, it isn't. All right? We can apply this to all kinds of different things and have applied it to all kinds of different things in our lives. But realistically, when you start hearing those gunshots, most of you, through no fault of your own, are going to go, that wasn't a gunshot. There's no way. Somebody's playing a prank. Somebody's got firecrackers in the building. Somebody's messing with my boss. Somebody's messing with the principal. There's no way. Our brain does not want to think that we are now in a life or death situation. And we live in a country, we live in a nation where thankfully we've been able to develop that mentality over years and years. We are relatively safe in almost any place we go to. And after seeing this class tonight, I don't want y'all to think that, you have to be scared to leave your house ever again. That's not the case. The statistics tell us we're going to be safe almost everywhere we go. But we also need to have that training in case these rare events do pop up where we need that training. So don't live in fear after tonight. Please don't do that. But take this training with a healthy amount of respect and understanding that should I find myself in this situation, I'll be prepared so that you don't end up being one of those deniers that sits there at your desk for a second too long or stands there in the hallway for a second too long going, no, that can't be what I thought it was. There's no way. No. We have to recognize that was bad, and I need to do something about it right this second. Because in these situations, every second matters. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but truly, every second matters. And in the longer version of this class, I shortened it down for you guys tonight so I don't have y'all here till 2 or 3 in the morning. If you let me talk, I will talk your ears off. I will talk all night long. But I've shortened this down for you guys. But in the longer version, I have a lot of videos that I show, and I've edited most of those out for this. But those videos will show over and over and over again the difference between just 2 or 3 seconds. That person didn't move fast enough and get into hiding fast enough. And as that door opened, the attacker saw them. Versus if they had moved just 2 seconds faster, they'd have been around that corner, and when that attacker opened the door, he'd have seen an empty room and would have moved on. Okay? That's how important those seconds are in these situations. So you cannot get stuck in that denial phase. You have to recognize that there is a threat and immediately move into deliberation. Okay, I've been presented with this threat. I've been presented with this new information. What am I going to do about it? And that's where this training is geared tonight. What to do when we hit the deliberation phase. You may have heard of this training before as run, hide, fight. We've had that training out for 8-10 years or so now. This is the same training. It's just been modified and updated a little bit. Okay, we're not going to talk about run, hide, fight. We're going to talk about ADD. All right, avoid, deny, defend. So we've recognized that there's a threat. We're going to do something about it. And then the final stage, we'll talk about this real quick before I move into the final stage. Texas State calls it the difference between the human brain and the lizard brain. I've been referring to it as that fight or flight response. What is our human brain thinking through this versus what is our innate biological programming going to do? And if we don't think about this stuff, if we don't make plans, if we don't rehearse this in advance, what will happen is in these situations, that biological programming will take over. And some of it, like I said, the pooling of the blood, the rush of the endorphins and everything to get you ready to run faster than you've ever run before, be stronger than you ever were, and have better reaction times than ever before, some of that actually can work against us if we don't have this on board, thinking through logically the situation as well. Fight, flight, freeze, we talked about that. The stress response. Our normal heart rate for most people in America is somewhere between 60 and 90 beats per minute. Okay, that's a good place to be. In these high stress situations, we could hit 120, 150, 175 plus. The problem is, as we move up, we get into the red zone, the gray zone, and then we never want to find ourselves in the black zone. Once you hit 175 plus, your body is so close to just shutting down completely that it doesn't matter how much training in the world you've had, your body physically cannot sustain you through that situation. So part of keeping that heart rate down is having a plan ahead of time, attending trainings like this, knowing what you're going to do, thinking about it. Like I said in the beginning, as we're going through this, think about your business, how it's laid out, your schools, the stores you go to. Think about where the exits are and things like that so that you have a plan. You're more likely to implement that plan in high stress versus when you don't have a plan, you tend to just freeze and panic. Heart rate goes up. The other way to help keep this down, I'm not here as an expert on this, okay? You can tell just by looking at me, but diet and exercise, very important. The healthier you can keep your physical body, the better prepared it will be to respond in a situation like this. Calm yourself, breathing, shift your emotions, stay fit, like I just mentioned. When this happens, take that quick breath and take action. I'm confident and I know what I'm going to do because I've been through the training and I've already thought about this and I've already made plans with myself, with my family members, with my coworkers. We've talked about this, we've sat it up. Maybe your next staff meeting at work, if y'all haven't done this before, maybe it's time to get with your boss, or if you are the boss, to say, hey, let's sit down and let's talk about if this happens here at this office, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond to that? Do it with your family members too. If you have a script and you practice it, you're far more likely to implement it under stress. We talk about this with our recruits and our cadets all the time. As a field training officer, when I was out on patrol, I would sit there, and even the most mundane call, neighbor calling in because their neighbor's dog is barking too much during the night. Before we ever put that car in drive, before we ever started heading to that location, I would turn to my rookie in the passenger seat, or if I was sitting over there and it was their turn to drive, I would turn to them in the driver's seat and I would say, how are you going to handle this? What are you going to do when we get on scene? Because when we get on scene, it's too late to be thinking about that. When this attack starts happening, it's too late to start thinking about what am I going to do. That starts right this second before this ever happens. And I would say, well, it's just a barking dog. I'm just probably going to talk to the neighbor. Okay, well, let me throw this out. What if the other neighbor that owns the dog is not happy to see you and they come out with some sort of weapon? What are you going to do then? Well, FTO McMath, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's just a barking dog. It could happen. We need to be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. And the more you think about this, the more you rehearse it, the more likely you are to take some sort of action in that moment rather than freeze. Let's see if this will play. We don't have the audio hooked up. That's not a problem. So, y'all may remember several years ago, it didn't occur in the United States, it occurred in France. High-speed train between the two cities. A man armed with a knife or an axe, I don't remember which, stands up and starts trying to attack the passengers of the train. 3 U.S. military young men were on leave from the military, were on vacation over there in Europe, happened to be on that train, happened to be on the car where this attack starts taking place. They saw the threat, realized this guy is trying to do harm, and the 3 of them immediately jumped up from their seats on the train, tackled the attacker, and held him down on the ground until the train reached the next station. Police could come out and take him into custody. Those 3 men undoubtedly saved countless lives on that train that day. But I promise you, because I haven't been in the military, but I've been in law enforcement long enough, and I've been in these high-stress situations, I know those 3 men had a plan. Whether it was through their military training, whether there was some sort of agreement between the 3 of them, I don't know. I've never interviewed them. But I guarantee you they had a plan because they were able to jump into action that quickly and save those lives. So it really does make a difference to know what you're going to do ahead of time. So we talked about this. Don't deny. If you hear gunshots, if you think they're gunshots, hey, that's gunshots. We need to do something. I would rather see you take everybody out of your office building to safety and then realize after the fact that it was just fireworks in the trash can versus sit in your offices, continue to think everything's fine, and then we're having a funeral for you guys. All right? I don't want that to happen. So immediately recognize that there's a threat, move to deliberation. Playing dead. I've heard this a lot. A lot of people ask me, Sergeant McMath, if I'm confronted with an attacker, I'm just going to lay there and play dead. Or should I lay there and play dead? Okay? This is not a good tactic for several different reasons, but the main reason that I'm going to tell you is because people who have survived these attacks have told us in great detail what the attackers did to people they suspected were playing dead. And I'm not going to get too graphic because I know there's going to be, a mixed audience. We have some children and different things that may be watching this. But just understand that if you're thinking about playing dead, that attacker is also aware that people may be playing dead, and they're probably not going to take chances. So this is not a good tactic. It's been taught in the past as part of civilian response courses. We no longer teach this. This is not a good tactic. Don't do it. There's other things that I'm going to teach you here very shortly to do instead. Hiding and hoping. This is another outdated tactic that we've talked about. When we used to teach run, hide, fight, we would tell you hide under a desk, hide in a closet, something like that. I'm still going to teach you a little bit about that tonight, but we're going to change that. We're going to modify the mentality around that a little bit. Because again, similar to playing dead, what we found is just hiding under a desk or hiding, behind a piece of furniture or something like that is not sufficient. These attackers are aware that people may be hiding under desks, may be hiding behind chairs and couches and things like that, and they're taking steps to counter that. So like I said, avoid, run. That's what we used to teach. Run. If you hear gunshots, you see an attack starting to take place, run. And that may still be the best tactic, but don't think run. I want you to think avoid. If I can avoid that situation to begin with, that's preferable. But if I can't avoid it and I'm in the situation, how do I avoid that attacker? How do I avoid that point of danger? Is it running? Maybe I just need to run as far away. Is it head to the exit and put space between me and that attacker? Is it get in my car? If I'm sitting in a car in a parking lot and I see this happening, is it just put it in drive and drive away and call 911, right? Those may be your best options, but I want you to think avoid. Avoid the danger if at all possible, because running may not be available, may not be an option available to us, but there may be other things that we can do as well to avoid. We used to teach hide. I want you to start thinking deny. If I cannot run, if I cannot avoid this attacker, how am I going to not deny them access to me? Just hiding behind my furniture, just playing dead in my office is not sufficient. I need to barricade doors. I need to grab bookshelves. I need to start tossing those things over, laying them behind the door. I need to pile up chairs. If nothing else, and you're the only thing in there, I want you laying up against that door and putting your full body weight against that door. Because what we know is that statistically, when attackers encounter any sort of physical resistance, a locked door, a door that they can't open quickly, more than likely, it's not a guarantee, but more than likely, they're going to move on, okay? But if you're hiding behind your desk and you've done nothing to that door, they're going to open that door, come in, and search that office to see if there's somebody in there that they can harm. So that's why I say don't hide. We need to deny access by any means necessary. So I talked about those door stops. Those are a great tool, especially if you're in an office by yourself and you may not have a door stop. Get on Amazon tonight, go to Walmart, Target, go over to the office section and buy yourself one. Because especially if you have an inward swinging door, shoving that door stop behind that door when you're in that office is a great tactic. It's not guaranteed, but I will take anything that I can do to increase my chances. And if you can wedge that door stop to keep your door from being open from the outside, that may be the difference between that attacker coming into your office and finding you and checking that door, going, I can't open it, and moving on. Because again, it's all about timing. That attacker knows they have a very limited amount of time to be able to inflict as much damage as possible. So they're not going to waste time trying to force open a door when they can go down to the next one, find an unlocked door, and go in there and carry out their attack. And finally, last case scenario, worst case scenario, everything else. We haven't been able to avoid it. We cannot deny entry for whatever reason, or the denial did not work, and this attacker is now in the room with us. What are we going to do? Defend. What we used to teach is fight, okay? And I'm going to talk about some specific tactics here in just a second on the defend side of things. Situational awareness. I cannot stress this enough. The first thing I talk about in any of my firearms courses is situational awareness. Before we ever pick up a gun and head out to the range and talk about how to shoot, how to protect yourself for self-defense, before any of my rookies ever answered their very first call with me in the car, the first thing I talked about was situational awareness. I'm guilty of it, as many of you are. We all have these smartphones. It's just a part of our society, you know. We don't have the old flip phones. We don't have the bulletproof Nokias anymore with Snake on there. They were great phones at the time, but we've all gone to these smartphones. And with it, our entire lives are on here. Our social media, our text messages, our phone calls, our internet access. We are glued to these things all day long, every day. I fall into this trap too, okay? I'm not talking to you as some perfect person. I'm not up on a pulpit talking down to y'all. I get too glued into this phone from time to time. Sometimes it happens. But I want you to start thinking about this tonight. If you've never thought about this before, how distracting these devices are. They're wonderful. They have given us a level of connectivity to the world that we've never seen before. They've given us access to information at the tip of our fingers that's accessible within seconds. You know, when I was a kid doing research projects, I used to have to go grab an encyclopedia or a dictionary or go to the library and pull out resource books and spend time looking it up on the computer to figure out where they were at, then go into the bookshelf, pull in the book, then go into the index and searching just to find out what I wanted to know about African elephants, or just to find out what I wanted to know about whatever my research project was at the time. Now I can get on this thing and I can have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours worth of information within seconds. And that's fantastic. But we have sold our souls to these things. And these will get us killed just as likely as they will help us in a panic situation. Get your heads out of the phones, especially when you're out in public. How many of you have walked to Target or Walmart or H-E-B or Kroger just in the last week, and as you were walking into that store, saw everybody walking through the parking lot like this? I've seen it. I'm sure you've all seen it. All right? If there was an attacker in that parking lot, would that person know about it? Would they have any clue that they were walking into the most dangerous moment of their life? They wouldn't. because they're too busy reviewing their shopping list or checking Instagram to see who liked their latest post, or on Facebook to see who's been talking about their vacation, right? That's all great and well. I use social media to keep my family informed, let them see pictures of my kids and what they're doing so that we can all stay connected, even though physically we're farther apart. But there's a time and a place for it. When I'm sitting at home at night in my bed and I want to post a few pictures, or I want to respond to a few text messages, that's great. When you're walking into HEB, when you're walking into your office in the morning, that is not the time to be on the phone. Because if that attacker is walking in right next to you, you're never going to know. Situational awareness is the most important thing. Recognize the threat before it becomes a threat. And I've kind of talked about this in some various different things so far tonight. You know, recognizing weird posts that people make, maybe things that they've said off hand or in conversations with you. That's situational awareness as well. Knowing, hey, this is not right. When you're walking into that store, instead of being on your phone, you're looking around through the parking lot and you see that person standing over there with a trench coat on, and it's today where the heat index was like 112 degrees. Okay, nobody in their right mind in Houston, Texas in August is going to be wearing a full-length trench coat in the middle of the parking lot when it's that hot outside. That should be a clue to you that that's not right. I need to avoid it. Now, there may be an innocuous explanation. Maybe the person has mental health issues. Maybe they're homeless and that's the only clothing they have, and they're wandering through the parking lot looking for handouts. We've all seen this before, right? But you need to recognize that that is not normal behavior, and then have a plan. Okay, maybe I watch him for another couple seconds to see what he's doing. Okay, I see he walked up to that car and just asked for a handout. That's what's going on here. Or I watch him for a couple seconds and I see him start pulling a gun out from underneath that coat. What do I need to do? Do I need to go into the store? Do I need to go confront him? Or I just got out of my car, do I need to put it in drive and get the heck out of there while calling 911? Okay? I will tell you, as a police officer, I have told my family, if we are somewhere and something happens, the chances of me off duty intervening are very low, unless I have to do it to protect my life or my family's life. If I can see the threat is 100 yards that way, and me and my family are right here, and I can put them in the car and we can safely escape that situation, we're going to do it. I'll be the world's best witness. I'll be on 911 immediately, and I'll be telling them, hey, look, there's somebody over there. This is the address. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm at in the parking lot. This person is over there. They just pulled out a gun. They're walking toward the store. They're wearing this. They're wearing that. They're doing this. I will give them the best information in the world. But I also have to know my limitations. I probably don't have my body armor on because I'm off duty. I probably don't have my bigger, more important weapons that I normally carry with me to work with me. I don't have my radio to call for backup. You know, I'm not in a situation to try to confront this person. I need my partners that are on duty that are equipped to get there as soon as possible. So my situational awareness has recognized that there's a threat, and I've alerted law enforcement to that threat. And now I'm putting myself in the best position to help. Because the other thing I don't want to do is become a victim. The more victims we encounter, the harder our job becomes. Because now not only do I have to deal with the victims that I'm encountering, but I've still got to try to get to the threat and take care of that. So if you can just not even become a victim, that's the best course of action. And the first step toward that is situational awareness. Leave as soon as possible. Know your exits. That's the other thing I want to harp on with you guys tonight. Know your exits. There's been study after study, and we go into depth with them in the full class about how knowing the exits or not knowing the exits was the difference between a couple of people getting injured and 40-something people dying and 80, 90-plus people getting injured, okay? Whenever you go into a place, understand that the likelihood of there being just one exit is very, very low. If we talk about this facility that we're at right now, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5, 6, 7 exits. If something were to happen right this second, that's 6 or 7 different ways that I could quickly get out of this situation. But if you don't think about that kind of stuff ahead of time, you're more likely to freeze and panic. Think about, okay, if I'm worshiping, where am I at in that building? Where are my exits? If I'm sitting at a restaurant, let me ask you all this. When you're sitting at a restaurant and I asked you, where are the exits? Everybody in here is going to point to the front door. Where else are exits that you probably don't think about in a restaurant? The kitchen? That restaurant has to get a food delivery somehow, right? And I guarantee you those delivery trucks aren't pulling up to the front door and taking all the food and vegetables and fruits to the back kitchen through the front door. They're coming to the back. So I may not think about that. If I've grown up in an environment where I've been safe and I've been blessed and I haven't had to have these conversations, I might panic and think, I got to get to the front door. Well, where is that attacker probably coming from? The front door. So are we really going to go straight toward the threat? No, we want to avoid, right? So moving toward the exits, and restaurants are always going to have a back door. Run through that kitchen, all right? The health code violations are the least of our concerns in that situation, all right? We're trying to save our lives. We're trying to save the lives of as many people in that restaurant as possible. Get through the back doors, all right? And it's almost always through the kitchen. So when you sit down next time at a restaurant, not only look for where the front door is, look for where the kitchen's at. And if you don't know where the kitchen's at, look for where all the waiters and waitresses are coming from. All right? Follow them, and you'll see where that kitchen is, so you know if somebody bad comes through that front door while I'm sitting here enjoying dinner with my family, we're going that direction. And then call 911 if at all possible. The quicker you can notify us, the quicker we can start that 3 minutes. All right? But that 3 minutes does not start until you make that first phone call to 911. But don't get on 911 if it's not safe to do so. I want you to put yourself in a safe situation. If you're in the same hallway as that attacker and you're staring at him, that is not the time to get out your phone and call 911 and say, hello, I'm looking at the bad guy, I need help. Run, escape, get out of that situation, and then as soon as it's safe to do so, call 911. And I say that because realistically, are we going to be alone in that building when this is happening? Probably not. So more than likely, if you're face-to-face with that attacker and you're focused on getting to safety, someone else in that building is already safe and they're already on the phone with 911, all right? But there can never be too many phone calls. Call 911, but only when it's safe to do so. Consider secondary exits. We talked about that. And in this picture, I'll point it out real quick. So this is camera footage from an actual active attack that took place, and several people in the building came through here to this back storage unit, storage area, back closet. They thought they were trapped. Unfortunately, the people that locked themselves in here were hiding. They did not barricade the door. The attacker eventually found them and did kill everybody in this room. Had they thought about it, look what's right here. An emergency ladder to the roof, okay? Am I going to jump off a third-story building? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what's below it, depends on what's coming up that ladder after me, and depends on how badly I want to survive that situation. But had they gone up that ladder through the hatch to the roof, could they have shut that hatch behind them? I'm not a small person, I'm not a huge person, but I guarantee you if I put all of my body weight and if I had anybody with me and we put all of our body weight on top of each other and we laid across that hatch, that dude's not coming up there. He's not going to have the strength and the leverage to stand on that ladder and push a hatch open. We just saved our lives. I didn't have to jump off that top of that building, but I saved my life in that moment. And then after all is clear and I can look over the side and I can see all the police officers there, I can wave and I can say help, or I can get on the phone and say 911, I'm on the top of this building, send the fire department or somebody to get me down. But you're alive to make that call. So look around. That's where that situational awareness comes in. We're not trapped in here. We do have another option available to us. But if we're not looking around for that kind of stuff, we miss it. And unfortunately, it costs these people their lives. Locking the door, turn your lights out, stay out of sight is what we used to teach. I want you to still kind of think about some of that, but instead of being away from the doors, I want you to be close to the door, and here's why. We want to barricade the door. I can't barricade the door if I'm hiding behind my desk on the other side of the room. I need to get over to that door, and I need to start putting stuff in front of it, whether it's, a bookcase or chairs, pushing my desk over in front of it, whatever I can do to keep that door shut as best as I can. Door stop under the door, like I said. And then I want you to stay near that door. Think about which way it opens and stand just out of the way, because when that attacker comes in that office or that room, that classroom, wherever you're at, if you're all the way on the other side of the room, what can you do to stop them when they start attacking? Nothing. But if I'm right here at the door, and again, remember, this is worst case scenario. Avoid has failed. Deny has failed. I'm now face to face with this attacker, and I have adopted the mentality, it's me or it's him. It's me or it's her. When they come through that door, I'm right here next to it, so I can tackle them. I can try to grab that gun. I can try to punch them in the face. I can try to kick them. I can do whatever it is. If I've got other people in the room, they're there with me, so we can try to swarm this guy. I may get shot. I may get stabbed. I may get hurt. But my chances of survival when I take the fight to him are much higher than if I hide on the other side of the room and I wait for him to bring the fight to me. Is he or she anticipating resistance when they come in that room? Probably not. They are thinking, I've got the upper hand. I'm the only person in this building with this gun. I'm the only person in this building with this weapon. Nobody's going to stand against me until the police get here. I don't hear sirens yet. I don't hear anybody coming down the hallway yelling, police, freeze, make yourself known. I'm good. I'm in charge here. So is he going to be expecting any kind of resistance when he comes through that door? Probably not. That half second catching him by surprise and you bringing the fight to them may be the difference between life and death. If you can get that weapon away from them and just tackle them to the ground, somebody in that room can then call 911. Hey, we're in classroom 119C and we're laying on the suspect. We got the weapon away from him, but we need police here now. Guess what? My dispatcher is going to relay that information to me over the phone, over the radio, and the very first place my partners and I are going to go is to room 119C. We know where the threat is. Our training tells us to proceed direct to the threat. In the absence of some sort of intelligence, like somebody on scene saying, we're in this room at this location with the bad guy, if we don't have that, we're listening for gunshots. We're listening for screams. We're listening for any kind of clues as to where this may be taking place so we can move directly to that area. If you can tell us, hey, this person's here, great. We can skip all the guesswork. We can come straight to that classroom. We can put him in handcuffs, and we can drag him out of there, and the event is over. But the only way that's possible is if you are prepared in that moment as a last-ditch effort to take the fight to the bad guy. Doorstop, we talked about that. Great tool. Doesn't cost a lot of money. Everybody can afford a $2.50 rubber doorstop on Amazon. And I know most of us are probably Prime members, so it'll probably be here overnight if you add on that $25 extra purchase, all right? I've tried to include a little bit of levity in these situations because I know it is heavy material, so a little bit of lighthearted moments. But small little things like that we may not think about if we haven't gone through these classes and sat down and gone, what can I do in this situation to better prepare myself? If it's an outward opening door, ropes, if you have ropes, tension sleeves, if you have those. If you get on Amazon, if you get on the internet tonight, there's all kinds of devices that you can look at and you can buy that are designed to secure your outer opening door. And what I mean by that is a door that opens away from you, like into a hallway or something out of your office or your classroom. A doorstop's not going to do us any good on those because the person's going to grab the door and they're going to open it toward themselves and come in. I can't be on the outside, apply that doorstop, and then get back in the room. So now I've got to think about other things. But what's something almost all of us have on at any given time? Almost all of us at least wear a belt to work. Some of us wear ties. I can stand there, and if it's a last worst case scenario where I have to stay here and I have to prepare to take the fight to that person, I can wrap my belt around that doorknob and I can pull that tight. I can wrap my tie around that door handle and I can pull it tight, and I can be holding that, and I can have somebody behind me say, hey, I'm going to hold this door, But if he gets it open, it's the fight, and the fight is on, right? Having that plan, having that communication. But like I've said, statistically, we know that if he comes up and he tries that door and he tries to open it and there's resistance, more than likely he's going to move on to another threat. That does not mean that you can let up. Okay, what we learned from the Virginia Tech shooting that occurred, that shooter went to classrooms, but then went back several times to some of the classrooms he had already visited. So he didn't just move to one until police stopped him. He had enough time in that building to go to classroom 100, to go to classroom 102, to go back to classroom 100, to go to classroom 103, to go back to classroom 102. And we've learned all that from eyewitness survivors to that incident that told us exactly how that gunman moved through the building. So you survived the first encounter. Do not let off the gas. Stay there, stay prepared until police officers knock on that door and let you out, or another method to escape becomes available. Maybe you realize that the office window you can actually open, or if you had a fire extinguisher or something where you could break the glass and escape out the window, do that at that point. But do not give up what you've already done unless you can either escape or you know that there's police officers on the other side of that door that are telling you to come out so that they can help you. Positioning, like I said, this kind of shows you guys an example of what I was talking about on being positioned next to the door so that when that attacker comes through, you're prepared to grab the weapon, grab their hands, tackle them, punch them, kick them, whatever. And I'm not a professional fighter. I don't have any martial arts credentials or anything like that. But I have talked to people that have told me, well, Sergeant McMath, it's the honor of the fight. You know, there's certain rules that you have to follow. You know, there's certain punches you're not supposed to do, or not. There's certain kicks you're not supposed to use in certain situations. This is not a martial arts match. This is not a boxing ring. All the rules are out the door. The dirty fighting, the dirtiest moves that you can think of are allowed because it's your life at stake. It's your life on the line. So I don't care what punch you use. I don't care what kick you use. I don't care if you use a chokehold or something like that. If it saves your life and immobilizes the attacker, that is all that matters. Okay? So don't worry about the honor of the fight or any of the honor of the rules of fights. That's all out the window. I'm not going out in a parking lot. I'm not going out like this. I'm not going to let my wife down. I'm not going to let my daughter down. And I'm not letting my stepkids down. Those were the words that were uttered after the fact by Lieutenant Brian Murphy here. He responded to a weapons disturbance in progress, what we would call. There's some sort of person on scene, may have a weapon, may not. There's no active attack in progress, but somebody has seen somebody at that location with a weapon. So we're going to get there and investigate. Upon arrival, he was shot by the attacker in the neck. That's where you can see all that scar tissue from the surgery. And as he's laying there in the parking lot, thinking about, I'm possibly going to bleed to death, these were the thoughts that were going through his head. And I have no doubt in my mind that that resolution, that resolve, that determination that I am not going to end tonight, this does not end this way, is what saved his life. And I tell all of our police cadets at the academy year after year after year, the fight is not over just because you got stabbed. The fight is not over just because you got shot. This isn't, a game of tag where it's like, oh, tag, you got me, I'm out, wait for the next round. This is not how this happens. You have to adopt a mentality of, I may get hurt, but it's not over. Okay? It is not over until God takes the breath out of my lungs, takes the beat out of my heart, and calls me home. That's when the fight is over. But up until that moment, I will do whatever I can because, and that's why I put it in my bio, I want y'all to understand. I have a wife. I have kids. Most of you in here have families. All right? We all have something to go home to. We all have something worth fighting for. So do not give up just because the situation is dire. It may be bad, but it's not the end. It's not the end until it's the end. And I need each one of you to decide right now, tonight, that you are going to fight and that you are going to stay in the fight until the bitter end. There is no giving up. All right? So there's some practical exercises that we would normally do in a full class where we could teach you. I'd have you guys position yourselves on doorways and practice doing that maneuver we just saw of an attacker walks in, what are you guys going to do, and things like that. Unfortunately, we don't have the time for it tonight. I didn't bring any of my padding or safety gear or anything like that. But just because we're not doing practical exercises doesn't mean that you can't, like I said, game plan ahead of time. Think about this stuff. After tonight, the conversation doesn't stop tonight. You know, I'm just giving you the information. I'm putting the ball in your court. It's up to you all to go home to your families and say, hey, if this happens at this place, this is what I want us to do. All right? Go to your coworkers and say, if this happens here at work, this is what we're going to do. Go to your fellow members here at the masjid and say, hey, if we're in one of these classrooms upstairs having a meeting, having a course tonight, and something happens, this is what we're going to do. If we're out in the parking lot and this starts happening, here's what we're going to do. The conversation never stops. It's starting tonight, and I encourage each of you to take it and take it home, take it to work, take it to school, take it to wherever you may be where this may happen, and have this conversation with those people. Because it's great if you have a plan, but it doesn't do a bit of good if nobody else in that room knows what your plan is, right? For those of you that have played organized sports, football, baseball, if I know what the play is, if I know I'm going to take the snap and I'm going to pass it to my wide receiver, but my wide receiver doesn't know that I'm going to be throwing the ball to him, is that play going to succeed? Absolutely not. It's going to end up in an interception, going the other way, and I just gave the other team 6 points. All right? Again, a lighter example compared to what this is. But if you have a plan, it doesn't do any good if nobody else around you knows what that plan is. I have rehearsed and talked it over with my wife and kids. If we're at Walmart, if we're at Target, if we're at church, wherever we're at, and something happens, this is what I want you to do. This is what I will be doing. And we're going to regroup at this point, and then we're going to go from there. All right? That way, should it ever happen, not only do I know the plan, my wife knows the plan, my kids know the plan, so that we can all put it into action. If y'all have a security team here besides the sheriff's office, where y'all have made a plan amongst yourselves about how you're going to respond to an incident, have this conversation with them in the coming weeks. If you do not have an internal security team and you're interested in setting something like that up, me, Kevin, David, any of us will be happy to sit down with you guys and talk to you all about that. I've done similar things with my church. We have an internal security team of off-duty police officers we all carry to the church service. We're not conspicuous. Everything's concealed. You never know it. But we all have a plan amongst each other. We know who each other are. We know where we sit inside the building during the worship, so that we all have a plan that if somebody comes in here while church is going on, this is how we're going to handle it. So these conversations start here, but they continue on. And it's good to periodically revisit this. That's why in the schools we have fire drills once a month. You know, that's why in the schools we practice disaster drills. Because if I have this conversation tonight and we don't talk about it again for another 3 years, that doesn't do us any good. 3.5 years later, we find ourselves in this situation and nobody remembers what the plan was that we made 3 years ago, because we're 3 managers past that, and I've changed coworkers a dozen times since then. Nothing's the same. So have these conversations repeatedly and revisit it. Hey, just as a reminder, just as a refresher in case we haven't talked about this in a while, this is coming up, or we're going to talk about this at the next meeting, and here's what we're going to do. What you do matters. I hope you all have taken that away tonight. I hope, if nothing else, you've taken away from me tonight that what you do matters. Inaction is not sufficient. Taking barely any action is not sufficient. The only way to survive or have any remote guarantee of survival in an active attack situation is to take decisive action. And the only way you can do that is by having the conversations, making the plans, getting together, and then rehearsing it several times a year. This is a kind of a timeline to sum up everything that we've talked about here. So the attack starts. We're looking for primary exits, okay? Do we know where those are? Yes, we can move straight to a void, All right, I can get out one of these doors right out here in the back. I can go out these doors to the side. I can go out those doors to the back playground area, and I can avoid this altogether. I'm safe. I'm on the phone with 911. I'm getting the police officers coming here so that they can save everybody that I can't. I can't identify the primary exits, or I don't have any, which is very rare because building codes and fire codes have evolved over the years to mandate that all new construction has to have multiple points of entry and exit. So I guarantee you almost everywhere you're going to be at is going to have more than one way in and out. But if you find yourself where you can't get out the primary exits, we're moving into deny. What can I do? Toppling bookshelves, propping desks against the door. Like I said, if nothing else, I've got nothing. I'm going to find myself, or I'm going to find the biggest, heaviest person in the room, and I'm going to say, I want you to sit down at that door, and I want you to lean back against it with everything you got. Because when that guy comes to the door and he tries to push it open, you cannot let him in. You make sure that that door stays closed, or stays as closed as possible, so that this guy says, this isn't worth it, and I'm moving on. If we can identify other exits after the fact, like I said, maybe I've denied that first entrance, and then I realize, oh, there was a window behind me the whole time. Let me just break this window and run out that way. Now's the time to implement that. But if you can't, prepare for round 2, prepare for round 3, prepare for round 4, however many rounds it takes of you denying and defending until you finally hear that sound of, police, we're outside the door, come out. Okay? Once you hear those words and you're convinced, and if you're not convinced, call it 911. Say, hey, I'm in office 9C, and I'm hearing somebody outside the door that says they're a police officer, but I don't know if they're really the police or if it's just the bad guy trying to get me out. Okay? That dispatcher can get on the radio real quick and say, hey, is there a police officer outside office C? And I can say, Sergeant McMath, I'm outside office 9C. Let them know it's safe to come out. And then they can relay that to you over the phone, okay? There's ways to get around that, but don't give up the fight, because it may not just be round 1. There may be multiple times that you have to go through this before we get there. Once the police arrive, follow all commands that we give you, okay? Something that we may tell you to do may not make any sense to you, but we have the training, and we go through this training every 2 years to recertify on it. And so we know what our plan is once we arrive and how we're going to handle this situation and what needs to be done. So just follow all the commands, even if they don't make sense, okay? I'm not going to lie to you all. We're probably going to treat you like suspects at first. We're probably going to tell you all to put your hands in the air or put your hands on your head, walk slowly toward the sound of our voice. It's not because we think you're a bad guy, but we just have to make sure, okay? Because there have been situations where the bad guy has tried to escape or has successfully escaped that initial police encounter by blending in with the escaping citizens, getting past the police perimeter, and then disappearing off, and then we had to launch a massive manhunt after the fact to track them down, issue warrants, all that kind of stuff. So we're probably going to treat everybody as if they're armed, as if they are part of the problem, until we can prove that you're not. And then as soon as we can, we're going to be setting up relocation centers, reorganization centers, things like that, where you can reunite with your family or your kids, different things like that. But I cannot stress enough, follow all commands that we give you. Because if we, in that situation, if we think that you're a threat, we're going to respond in kind. So just go along with what we say, and we'll get you to safety. Show your palms. You know, I teach my cadets all the time. If you don't see a weapon in their hands, that's not the end of the show, but it's a pretty good indicator that we're fairly safe, because a gun tucked into my belt or a gun tucked into the back of my pants is not going to kill me if it's not in his hands immediately. And so I'm going to apply that same mentality to everybody I'm bringing out of that situation. If I can see their hands, even if they're armed, maybe you're a concealed carry license holder. If I can see that you're not armed, you're not a threat to me in that exact second, and we can move you on to step B of the process. And do not move until you're told to move. As I've talked about, our primary thing is to stop the killing. We're going to walk by you, even if you're injured. We're going to bypass you until the threat is secured. Then we can come back and start rendering aid. We'll stop the dying. That means we'll start triaging. We'll look for the most severely injured people. We'll start administering emergency care to them first. The less injured people we will get to last. We may not even get to you personally. We may just secure the area and then have EMS move in and start doing all the things that they're going to do. But we will get to you. But just don't be surprised, even if you've been injured and you're laying there in your office or you're laying there in the hallway, don't be surprised if that police team walks right past you, because we have not secured the threat yet. Additional training that you guys can do, I brought it up earlier, Stop the Bleed. That's an excellent training that's easy to put on for you guys. I am a Stop the Bleed instructor. It's very easy to teach you all how to use a tourniquet, how to do emergency wound packing to stop arterial bleeding and stuff like that may save somebody's life in that situation. People need help, so always seek additional training if possible. I'm always seeking additional training. I encourage you all to do the same as well. That's just from the Stop the Bleed class. What I want you to understand is that even though you're civilians, you're not police officers, you're not military, you're not coming into this situation fully armed and ready to handle it, you are not powerless. That is the message of tonight. You are not powerless in these situations. If you have a plan, and you have everybody else around you has a plan, and you've taken some reasonable steps to secure yourself and to be able to implement that plan, and you have some additional training, you can survive these encounters. And the last thing I'll leave you all with is do not name them. You will notice tonight I have not named a single attacker. All right, as we went through all those different events, as I've given you all these different situations, I have not named the attackers. Too many of these people are implementing or carrying out these attacks because they want to be known for something. They feel they're a nobody, they feel they are an unknown, and they want to go down in history. We deny them that, and that is part of this training. So from tonight on, whenever you see an attack in the news, whenever you see something horrible, I encourage you all to not name them. Do not give these attackers the notoriety that they are looking for. Instead, look for the survivors, look for the victims, and give them the notoriety, because they are the ones that deserve to be remembered. All the teachers that have given their lives protecting their students in these mass attacks, all the bosses and fellow employees that have given their own lives protecting their other employees, those are the ones we want to remember. Those are the ones we want to celebrate, not the horrible, evil people that brought this to them. And that's all I have for you tonight. I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you so much, McMath, tonight. It's been very useful, and inshallah, we'll continue. We'll prepare a plan and we'll discuss with you. Assalamu alaikum. Sorry for a little bit late, but this was a very useful, all those who attended, but those who did not attend, they can watch replay on the Facebook.